Om Shuklam Varadaram Vishnu Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavadanam Dhyayet Sarvavighnopashantaye Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murtibheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Number 60. Yatato hyapi kaunteya Purushasya vipaschitaha Indriyani pramathini Haranti prasabham manaha. Yatato hi api kaunteya Purushasya vipaschitaha Indriyani pramathini Haranti prasabham manaha. So, yatataha vipaschitaha purushasya pramathini indriyani prasabham manaha haranti. Okay. So, manaha haranti. It torments the mind. Torments the mind. What is it that torments the mind? So, the indriyani. Indriyani are the sense organs. Pramathini indriyani. So, the ones who are the powerful sense organs. Of whom? Of a person, a Purusha, a wise person who is striving in his pursuit. So even a person who's totally engaged in the pursuit has viveka, has discrimination, has some wisdom. Even for such a person, it just points out the difficulty of being able to manage one's mind. Control is a word. We often use this word control. So it takes away the mind. The mind is taken over. So control also has different connotations. There are different types of control. So there is one type of control which is very aggressive controlling. So intense control, that kind of control. If somebody has control problems, so they want to control everything, control everybody. It's not. That is one kind of control. Or then there can be a control which is a little more gentle way of controlling somebody. Then another, you can also control by manipulation. So some people control, they are not aggressive, but they are very passive. In fact, you control more passively the other person. That's called manipulation. So there are different ways. So when we use the word control, you have to control your indriyas, you have to control your mind. So it can have all kinds of meanings. It looks like a very aggressive act, but that is really not what is meant here. So usually what happens is our senses, indriyas, when we talk about, they are the sense organs. So organs of action and organs of perception. They are just organs, like the eyes. So it's like a camera. All it does is it sees things. You open your eyes, whatever is in front, it will see. So the senses in themselves have no capacity to control anything. It is what is behind the senses, which is the mind. So the senses, the way they operate is, so they bring all the input of all the data is taken into the mind, and the mind is the one that processes everything. So when we say you control of the indriyas, it is really speaking learning how to manage the mind. Won't even say, need not say control also. So it's managing one's mind in a way that the mind is not carried away by the senses. Senses are looked upon as an instrument. After all, they are an instrument of action. They are an instrument by which I'm able to relate to the world. I'm able to interact with the world. So any instrument has to be in my control. It's like a musical instrument, you know. So the instrument is not supposed to control me. I'm supposed to control the instrument. And even like a musical instrument, you know. So it's more like mastering one's mind, you know. And in mastering also there are varieties of masters. There are masters who are so very difficult masters. There are masters who are easy masters. And then there is another master. When you say somebody masters, is a master musician. He has mastered the art of playing this instrument. When you say that, or he has mastered his vocal singing, etc. What does that mean? You know? So in fact, a master makes always seems to be doing things effortlessly. You know, someone who's learning music always has to make much more effort, you know. So his whole attention is struggling in mastering his voice. But somebody who has mastered the voice, so it looks like he doesn't need to struggle as much, you know. Whatever note he wants to come out of his throat, it comes out, you know. Whatever he imagines, it comes out. The one who's learning, so whatever he imagines, something else comes out. So that's why he has to struggle. That it is that kind of mastery that we talk about. So when the person who has really mastered the mind is a person who doesn't struggle with the mind, and we all know that, we know what it is like in regards to certain things, in regards to things that we have outgrown. So in childhood, as we grow up, there are some many things important to us, you know, like the toys, like the balloons, like all kinds of stuff are important to us. But then later on, they are not as important when we outgrow them. So when you become a grandfather, you know, when you are a child and you're playing ball with your friend, and then or you're playing with somebody else or your parent or your grandparent, then you're competitive, you're very competitive and serious. But the grandfather who's playing with his grandchild is not competitive the same way. He is in fact enjoying it in a very different kind of a way, because he has outgrown. The little boy will not give up the ball. He'll get upset if you take it from him. But the grandfather is not supposed to get upset when you take the ball from the grandfather. So because he does the same thing, the action is the same, but the whole perception is very different. One person has outgrown certain needs, the other person has not outgrown it. So when we talk of control of the mind or mastery of the mind with respect to the sense organs, you know, mastery of the mind can be at different level. It can be at the level of desires, it can be at the level of emotions, it can be at the level of senses. So when we talk of this kind of a mastery, eventually what we are talking about is a person who's able to manage himself so well. He has outgrown the need of a lot of these external things to keep himself content. That's the idea. So, but from the Indriya standpoint, and the Indriyas and the mind, it does have the capacity, the senses, because they are externally directed. So that's why we get caught up. The mind gets caught up with the world outside because we are born to interact with the world, really speaking. So that's otherwise there is no purpose to be born. If we are not interacting with the world, then what's the whole point of being born? So the jiva is born in order to experience the world, in order to interact with the world. So by that very definition, the world has a way of so pulling me to itself, and the mind has a way of going after, away from itself, and so along with the senses directed outwards. So it is a matter of, so that's what he's pointing out in that verse. So for which of course he says, तानि सर्वाणि संयम्य युक्त आसीत मत्परः वशे हि यस्येन्द्रियाणि tasya prajna pratishtita. So tani sarvani sanyamya yukta asita matparaha vashehi yasya indriyani tasya prajna pratishtita. So tani is indriyani. So sarvani indriyani sanyamya, having restraint. So having brought under his own control. Such a person, he says, yuktaha. So the one who's committed to the spiritual pursuit. So yuktaha. So such a person, he says, asita. He remains. He remains. How does he remain? By being matparaha. Matparaha is so the one, me, who's the paramam vastu for him. So me, the person who's the ultimate goal. Me here is referring to, so Sri Krishna is so identifying himself as Bhagavan. So the one who's committed. So in life, what is your ultimate commitment? What am I really trying to seek? Even though I'm operating my senses that are directed towards the world, but that is not the ultimate purpose of interacting with the world. The ultimate, keeping the ultimate goal as Bhagavan. That means whatever I do in the world, that is purpose of that is to ultimately lead me to a recognition of my connection with the Lord, a connection with the source. That's all. Commitment to Bhagavan means even a fanatic is committed to Bhagavan. It's not that kind of commitment that we talk about. So there, so the fanatic, the extremists, all of them have a commitment to the Lord, but there is some kind of a understanding of a Lord, and then whatever you do, it is all the end justifies the mean kind of a behavior, and then anything and everything you do. That's not the idea. That's not the way to be committed to Bhagavan. The commitment to Bhagavan here is that whatever I do in my interacting with the world, the purpose of that is not for the immediate gain of what I am interacting for, but the purpose of that is so that the process, what is the process of doing in the world, the process of interacting in the world, has to help me grow, has to help me get to a point beyond what is immediate. And that point beyond is for us what we define as the ultimate goal, which is in terms of recognition of my connection with the source, with my source. In other words, what we call as Bhagavan. Because Bhagavan is the source of everything, including myself. And what I'm seeking is reconnecting with my, rediscovering, reconnecting with my source. So that is how he says, Asita Matparaha, the one who remains with his mind being committed to me in spite of whatever he does. In fact, that's the only way to get the Indriyas to manage to manage them, because so unless I have a goal which is more profound, I'm going to be caught up in the other goals which are so less fulfilling. Vashehi yasya indriyani. So such a person whose indriyas, whose senses are under his Vasham, is under his control. That such a person, he says, Tasya prajna pratishtita. For him, his prajna, his knowledge, his clarity is the one that becomes firm. So to gain firmness of one's clarity and knowledge, self-knowledge is the ultimate end. It cannot be done when if you take Bhagavan out of the equation. That's not possible. Lord always has to be the ultimate goal. Lord means what we see as our where we've come from. So now a little bit he will elaborate upon what happens if you are caught up with the indriyas or the senses. Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho bhijayate. क्रोधात् भवति सम्मोहः सम्मोहात् स्मृतिविभ्रमः स्मृतिभ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशः बुद्धिनाशात् प्रणश्यति. So in these two verses, so Bhagavan gives some psychodynamics, it talks a little bit about the mind, about psychology. It's very interesting. So these two verses people quote all the time. Anyone who has some background of psychology will quote these two verses and then say that Gita has lot of psychology, they will say. So Gita, as if it's a textbook on psychology. It's not a textbook of psychology. I noticed there are two types of people. So in this context, okay. So one is there are the psychologists who have some interest in spirituality. Then there are the religious people who are committed to religious study, then who have some interest in psychology. So this is the two sides from which we come. So the people who have psychology background will read some verse like this and then say, "Oh, Gita talks a lot about psychology." Gita doesn't really talk about psychology. I was once asked to come to a conference. There was in Singapore, and they gave me this topic because of my background. So they gave me this topic: spirituality and psychology in the Gita. So then I go there. I say, okay, whatever people ask, I generally say okay because it's only a starting point. To talk what I have to talk. So I go there and say, well, Gita doesn't talk about psychology. There's a topic supposed to be psychology in Bhagavad Gita. It's not a book on psychology. Psychology talks of development. It talks of psychological growth. It talks about social development. It talks about the cognitive development. It talks about emotional development. That is all part of psychology. That's the subject matter. It talks about psychopathology. It talks about normal sense. Gita doesn't talk about all those things. It's not a textbook of psychology. It is a book of Apaurushiya Vishayas. It's a book of Atma Jnana, Brahma Jnana. Just because it addresses few issues that take place in the mind, so that is important to address in spiritual growth anyway. That doesn't make it a textbook of psychology. Neither does it make it some book where there's a lot said about psychology. It doesn't address any of these things. It doesn't talk about growth. It doesn't talk about social growth. It doesn't talk about interpersonal relationships. It doesn't talk about conflicts. It doesn't talk about so many other things, which are all part of the study of psychology. So, really speaking, I claim the Gita does not talk about psychology. That is not its subject matter. Okay. Neither psychology talks of spirituality either. So these are two different things. So we have to look at them separately and see what each one has to say. But in any case, here he talks about Indriya. So Indriya says, Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsaha. So person, so dhyayataha means you think about, you dwell. So when you start dwelling upon vishayas, about objects, objects of senses, when you start constantly dwelling upon a particular object, what happens? Sangaha teshu upajayate. So for that person, upon dwelling, that sangaha is born. So attachment is born naturally. That's the whole principle of your commercials on the TV. The commercials on the TV are so you keep bombarding the same idea over and slowly you start believing that you can't live without this particular item. That is called sangaha. You develop a desire for that. Okay. Sangat sanjayate kamaha. The repeatedly thinking about an object creates a desire for that object, and then you start dwelling upon that object also constantly, because it's like in a computer, the default option changes. So if you repeatedly do something, then the default option changes, and the brain networks get rearranged, and now you want that object, you desire that object. Sangat sanjayate kamaha, desire. Naturally, once the desire for an object is there, what's the next step? I have to get it, I have to achieve it. And in achieving it, there are two possibilities: either I get it or I don't get it. Either I get the object of my desire or I don't. If I don't, there also, sometimes it all has to do with my patience. This called as gratification. So in gratification, there is instant gratification or so delayed gratification. So generally, we all start with instant gratification. If I want something, you want it right away. So who has the time? You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So if I want something, I want it today. Or some people, if you want something, you want it yesterday. They just can't wait. So if that is the thing, that means if you cannot get the gratification, then that gives rise to frustration. It's called frustration tolerance. And this is all in psychology. They talk about all these things. So there is a frustration. Each one has a tolerance level for frustration. For some people, it is very low. For some people, it is very high. Low means then you start getting angry. You start getting upset if you don't get your. These are people who don't get their way. People who don't get their way immediately, we get upset. You get angry. So if a desire not fulfilled, ultimately or immediately, whichever as the case may be, gives rise to anger. Okay. Frustration leads to anger. So anger at, you blame everybody, for not giving me what I want, when I want it, how I want it. So krodha is born. What happens if a desire is fulfilled? Well, fulfillment of desires often leads to lobha, greed. Greed. So, not fulfilling a desire leads to krodha. Fulfillment of desires leads to wanting more of it, leads to greed. In either way, both of them are called as shat ripus. They are the inimical to me. But in any case, here, krodhat bhavati, he says sammoha. Sammoha. So sammoha means this is where. So anger, because once it's not being fulfilled and I'm angry, then in anger my perspective is gone, my reasoning is gone, and then I start blaming everybody. I projecting, blaming, distorting. These are all normal things that happen to a human being. Krodhat bhavati sammoha. Once there is like that kind of thinking, moha is a delusion, or wrong thinking. Sammohat smriti vibhramaha. Smriti is knowledge, memory. So memory of right and wrong. So what is right? What the viveka? So the memory of what I know. So all my, that's the perspective we talk about. The whole perspective changes. So person says, what happened to this person? So in the normal course, the thinking, when I'm not angry, my thinking is reasonable. Generally, that is when we give advice to other people. It's always easy. Everybody says the right thing when it comes to somebody else. But when it comes to ourselves, that is where we lose our perspective. So there is smriti vibhramaha, the memory of the things, what is to be done, what is not to be done, all goes away. Smriti bhramshat buddhi nashaha. And then the buddhi nasha in terms of viveka buddhi. So what is right, what is wrong? So everything gets distorted, really speaking. Vinasha kale, they say, Vinasha kale viparita buddhi. So when the time for vinasha comes, this is a little bit, other factors are there, but it almost looks like that, that when the person who normally thinks very straight and will not do certain things, when it looks as though, so when something happens, and then all the thinking becomes all distorted, and so that is called as vinashakala, and the person self-destructs really. So it destroys other people in terms of hurting them and all, and also destroys themselves. So buddhi nashat, he says, pranashyati. Pranashyati means it self-destructs in a way, because your happiness is gone, so your joy is gone. Then that is as good as what's the point? That is like self-destruction. If I am capable as a human being of enjoying some happiness in the world, and I end up doing things by which I make myself unhappy and everybody around me unhappy, that might as well, it is a kind of, I have destroyed at least my opportunity completely. So, so what should we do? रागद्वेषवियुक्तैस्तु विषयानिन्द्रियैश्चरन् आत्मवश्यैर्विधेयात्मा प्रसादमतिगच्छति रागद्वेषवियुक्तैः तु विषयान् इन्द्रियैः चरन् आत्मवश्यैः विधेयात्मा prasadam adhigacchati. So raga dvesha viyuktai. Viyukta means becoming free from raga likes and dislikes. Okay. It's not, doesn't say give up likes and dislikes. One can't give up likes and dislikes. Neither is it necessary also. Even in spiritual pursuit, why am I giving up? Suppose I say you have to give up likes and dislikes. That means what? All of them or some of them is the question. Suppose you say all the likes and dislikes you give up. Then what about my spiritual pursuit? Am I not supposed to like that or want to do that? Should I give that up also? So no, it is not just giving up like that. But he says viyuktaihi, not being bound by them. Okay. So being detached from them. We normally, likes and dislikes have a way of binding us. They compel us. We are in their mercy, at their mercy. So because all my actions are centered around the basis, the motivation for my actions is likes and dislikes. Why do we do things after all? Why do I eat what I eat? So, in spite of the sugar problem. So purely because of likes and dislikes. So our whole motivation for doing any actions is likes and dislikes. It's not how it's supposed to be for a human being. That may be okay for non-human beings. Other animals all live based on their likes and dislikes. But then their likes and dislikes are guided instinctually. Ours are not guided instinctually. We have a certain free will. That's therefore, so our likes and dislikes are not always right and wrong. Because for the animals, there is no right and wrong. They do what they like to do, they don't do what they don't like to do. But I can't do that. It is not given to me to do that because I have this particular free will in which I can make a choice of actions. So which brings in the whole other idea of right and wrong. So my motivation can either be likes and dislikes, or it can be right and wrong. The two are not always consistent with each other. So here he says ragadve, when it comes to likes and dislikes, he says, yeah, whatever likes and dislikes one may have, but then one needs to be not bound by them, not make them as your primary motivation in order to do things, but keep your primary motive as right and wrong. Then likes and dislikes do have a play, but then your likes and dislikes, you have to try and make it consistent with that which is dharma adharma, in other words. So by doing that, you will not be at their mercy. They will be at your mercy. So this way you can then use them in terms of your own benefit. So he says, viyuktaihi, Vishayan Indriyaihi Charan. So then this is how you detach from the objects. And then you do what you have to do. Indriya is not, one cannot stop the indriyas from functioning. The indriyas have to continue to function. They will only stop when the person dies. Up to that point, the sense organs have to function. Otherwise, I have to shut myself down completely. Which is the idea we have. The idea we have is a person is always, it has to sit in meditation in order to be so one with God. If I have to already close my eyes and separate myself from the world and then just sit down doing nothing, then that is not the way. That will happen later on anyway, when I'm gone from here. Then I'm not interacting with the world. But while I'm here, I'm supposed to interact with the world, but then interact in a way that I'm not at the mercy of the objects, but I am using my indriyas. He says. Atma Vashyehi. Atma here is Antakarana. So here with the Antakarana, with the mind being under having mastered one's mind, Videya Atma, the one who has controlled himself, control. Again, not the Atma is controlled. Atma doesn't need to be controlled because Atma is not out of control. It is a mind that is not in control. The word Atma is used in many different ways. Sometimes the Atma is used for the body. Sometimes the Atma word is used for the mind. Sometimes the Atma word is used for Atma. So we have to contextually, it has to be understood. So doing this, he says, prasadam adhigacchati, prasannata, swasthyam prapnoti. Says he gains tranquility. Person gains tranquility. You get your spiritual well-being. And what happens in this well-being? Prasade sarva dukkhanam nirasyopajayate prasanna chetaso hyashu buddhi paryavatishthate. So he gains this prasadam, he said. He gains a well-being, a spiritually gains a well-being. Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanihi asya upajayate. So results. So eventually, what results? Sarva dukkha hani. So removal, destruction of all kinds of sorrows. Sorrows take. This is what it means. It's a person who has a tranquil mind, inner tranquility. He says he doesn't go through suffering. I mentioned this. Suffering is a cognitive thing. Suffering is centered on our own thinking process, the errors in our thinking. So, based on our interpretations, misinterpretations of things. So, that kind of suffering is called tapa, tapatrayam. There are adhyatmika, adi bhautika, and adi daivika tapas. There is suffering or pain, disturbance in terms of, so adi daivikam. First of all, there are things happen, so of in nature things happen which can disturb my peace, disturb my tranquility, shanti. Prasadam is also another word for shanti, we can take it. So that there are things that happen, a hurricane for example here, so that can disturb my tranquility. This is called adi daivika tapa. Then there is adi bhautikam tapas. Abhautikam is the other beings around me. So there is a world around me. There are beings around me. So here there are snakes and alligators. They all can come and disturb my peace, disturb my tranquility, other people, etc. And then there is adhyatmikam. So within myself, my own mind, my own past, my own thinking can cause disturb my. In fact, that is the biggest tapam. That's the biggest thing that disturbs one's tranquility is within oneself alone. So all these kinds of dukkhas or miseries, tapatrayam it is called, they all go they are removed, he says. Prasanna chetasaha ashu buddhi paryavatishtate. So his buddhi becomes firm. His mind becomes well set in the knowledge about himself, in being equipoised. He says prasanna chetasa. Ashu means soon, quickly. So very quickly he gets a mind and he is at peace with himself. So relative contentment he talks about. नास्ति बुद्धिरयुक्तस्य न चायुक्तस्य भावना न चाभावयत शान्तिः अशान्तस्य कुतः सुखम्. So, nasti buddhihi ayuktasya. One who is not yuktaha. One who doesn't have the discipline. The spiritual discipline, the one who is not committed. Spiritual discipline involves one's own growth, growth and knowledge. And so spiritual discipline doesn't necessarily just mean sitting and doing pujas every day. That's not what we talk about. So even though that is part of it, but then spiritual discipline is the commitment to one's own growth, self growth, and spiritual knowledge seeking. So he says, for one who is ayukta, one who does not have that kind of a commitment, he says, nasti buddhihi. He, where is he? This Atma Surupa, Vishaya Buddhi. So Buddhi, where he comes to know himself, gain knowledge about who he is, what he is, his essential nature. How is that possible for one who doesn't have a commitment to his own personal growth? Really speaking, without a commitment to one's own growth, really one can never accomplish, one can never get to know oneself. Most of the time, we are all totally engaged in outside, in other things, in the world, and other people's lack of growth. We spend more time figuring out other people's lack of growth than we do figuring out our own state of growth. So he said nacha ayuktasya bhavana, and bhavana is a contemplative mind. So neither a person who's committed, not committed to himself, he cannot develop a contemplative mind either, because to have a contemplative mind one has to be self-reflective. People who are not self-reflective are not contemplative, so they are calculating. They will calculate about the world, they may be smart and intelligent and sit down and be able to strategize things, but if one cannot look at oneself, then one is not a contemplative person. He says, abhavayataha shantihi. So, for such a person who is not self aware, who is not contemplative, he cannot have shanti. Because shanti is centered on oneself, it is not centered on the things outside. We sometimes think peace, we want a peaceful environment. We think peace can be obtained. So, how am I going to get peace? Where from am I going to get peace? So we seek peace by changing our environment, whereas peace is something that is an internal, it's an internal state. It has to come from within, and it is something eventually is something that I discover as my own nature. So thus he says, Ashantasya Kuta Sukham. Finally, for the person who's not able to get even a relative degree of quietude or tranquility within themselves, where from Sukham, that a sense of contentment. Sukham is contentment. Simple joys one may get, momentary joys, transient joys and sorrows we all get from things outside. But then the sukham, the peace, the quietude, the tranquility that is there within. So that where from is that going to be possible? Indriyanam vicharatam यन्मनोनुविधीयते तदस्य हरति प्रज्ञाम् वायुर्नावमिमाम्बसि इन्द्रियाणां हि चरतां यन्मनः अनुविधीयते तद अस्य हरति प्रज्ञाम् वायुः नावमिव ambasi. Ambas is water. Ambaha is water. So like even, Ivam is like even. So Navam. Navam is the boat. Like even the wind, like even Vayu knocks a boat around. So also this person, the person's mind is not around. How? Because of so charatam indriyanam, a mind, indriya sense organs which are wavering, which are directed outwards, which are not disciplined, and the mind following it. Manaha anuvidiyate. So the mind that follows the sense organ, sense organs are always flickering. They are fickle because that's their job. They are supposed to be directed. So then they are reporters, really speaking. So they just report what is there outside. It is the mind that follows the senses. So if my mind is totally following the senses, it's going to be scattered all over the place. Maybe a scatterbrain, as we call it here, is going to become a scatterbrain. So scatter mind. This scattered mind, he says, is prajnam harati. Prajna is wisdom. So for a mind that is scattered, the mind that follows is at the mercy of the senses. Such a mind's wisdom is taken away, carried away. And then he knocks around like even the wind knocks around the boat in the water without any anchor. So therefore, so much he said about the indriyas. Tasmad yasya mahabaho nigrihitani sarvashaha indriyani indriyarthebhyah tasya prajna pratisthita. So, so he's saying the same thing which he said before, Yasya Mahabaho Nigrihitani Sarvashaha Indriyani. So therefore, for the person, he says, whose Indriyas are always well restrained from and pulled away from the Indriyarthas, other sense objects. So this way, for the person whose sense organs are restrained from the sense objects, his prajna is pratishtita. He said this before. Then he elaborated a little bit upon the nature of the indriyas, how they get directed outside, how the mind responds, the whole psychodynamics of anger, and then he gave a metaphor of the boat, and then finally he says, therefore, as I said before, so the one whose indriyas are under control and separated and restrained from the sense objects, his knowledge, prajna, becomes well established. He says. And how does this person appear in the world? How does he come across? Ya nisha sarvabhutanam tasyam jagarti samyame yasyam jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyato munehe. Okay, so ya nisha, ya sarva bhutanam nisha. Nisha is night time. So he says that which is the night for everybody. Sarva bhutanam tasyam jagarti sanyami. So for this person, for the person whose knowledge is well established, self-knowledge is well established. So whatever is understood as night for the others is understood as day for this person. So we say this sometimes. So if I say the sun is rising, you say the sun is setting. If I say it's night, you say it's day. Generally, when we say like that, so we are talking about. So we have two different ways of perceiving the world, right? So and then so in this, or you're oppositional. There are two interpretations. Either we have different ways of looking at something, or you are oppositional. You just want to oppose me. If I say night, you'll say day, even if it is night time. So, because you have to say the opposite of what I say. So, here is a wise man an oppositional person, or is the wise man somebody who has another perspective on things? Here, obviously, is not an oppositional person. So, which is the one when it is night for everybody, it is day for the wise man. When it is day for everybody, it is night for the wise man. In the sense, the person has a perspective which is different from, so he sees something different from what everybody else sees. He recognizes things differently than the other person. Night and day also here, it's not just two different perspectives. I have one way of looking at the world and you have another way of looking at the world, and everybody has their own way of looking at the world. And so what is the truth? And then some people say everybody has their own truth. So everybody has to discover their own truth. It cannot be like this. So truth by definition has to be one. You cannot have so multiple truths. So there can be many errors, but there can be only one truth. So thus here, night and day also refer to knowledge and ignorance. So darkness is often compared to ignorance, and then light is compared to knowledge. So he says, when everybody else is in the dark, this person has a light of knowledge. So this is knowledge about oneself. Atma Jnanam is being talked about. So then everybody else, the one who doesn't know the Atma, is Ajnaha, is ignorant. So where everybody is ignorant to themselves, the wise man is knowledgeable about himself and what he is knowledge about, so that other people do not see that. And what other people see, he doesn't have that particular perspective. He sees beyond that. He sees others what others see also, but he also, so like the scientist. So a physicist knows, then you see a coal, you see a piece of coal, and then the physicist also sees a piece of coal. But then, no, diamond. So you see a diamond, and then you get all excited, and then the physicist sees the diamond, and he says this is carbon. So he sees the diamond, but he also says it is carbon. But he sees the diamond also. He doesn't mistake, even though both of them are carbon. But for his engagement, for the girl, he doesn't bring a ring made of charcoal. Then he'll be in trouble. So he still has to bring diamond only. But even though he can't say this is carbon, that is carbon. After all, darling, why does it matter? I love you. Both are carbon. That won't. Even if she's a physicist, she's not gonna accept that. So he says it is not that kind of a thing. He sees what the other person sees, yet sees something which is beyond. At the same time, what the others don't see, he sees what the others see. He sees that, but also sees beyond that. आपूर्यमानम् अचलप्रतिष्ठम् समुद्रमापः प्रविशन्ति यद्वत् तद्वत् कामायं प्रविशन्ति सर्वे स शान्तिमाप्नोति न कामकामी. Okay, so here the interesting question comes up. If all this is okay, this person, you gain tranquility, and then you have restrained all the indriyas away from the world, and you're content in yourself. But then that means it looks like I lose out a lot, I lose out a lot from the world, because so till now I have been getting so much from the world in fulfilling my desires. I've had varieties of desires all my life, and I have strived, I have fulfilled them, and they've brought me joy. I cannot deny that fact. So here, suppose this person, I gained all this tranquility, and that means that I have to pull back from the world now, you say. So I pull back from the world, and then my mind is senses are under my control. So what happens to all this joy that is born of me fulfilling the desires? Looks like I'm going to lose out on a lot of little things. Maybe this is a big thing, but then I'm going to lose out on a lot. I don't want to miss anything. I want to make sure that I get the little joys also. For which he says, Apuryamanam achala pratishtham samudram. Samudram apaha. So like the waters that are there in the ocean, which are full. Ocean is full, complete, in the sense it is almost can be equated to infinite. So because as much as the waters drain into the ocean, it doesn't really make the ocean bigger. And then however much water evaporates from the ocean doesn't disappear. So ocean is a full ocean. Okay. So he says, Yadvad, just as he says, Apaha pravishanti. Just as the varieties of waters, means rivers. So just as all the rivers enter the ocean, the infinite ocean, he says similarly, Tadvat kamaha pravishanti, sarve kamaha, sa shantim apnoti. So similarly, all the desires, they enter. They enter who? So enter this person who has this fullness within. Okay. So all the small desires fulfill. It's not that I stop fulfilling. I lose out on the fulfillment of small desires when I gain fullness. When I gain fullness, all the desires resolve into that one fullness. So, like even all the rivers entering the ocean, they lose themselves in the ocean, which is full. Because after all, when I fulfill desires and the joy that I get from the fulfillment of my small desires is not coming from the objects, really speaking. The joy, the source of that joy is not the object. The source of the joy is myself alone. So I just get a taste of that joy. It comes from within me. It doesn't come from the object. If it came from the object, if it was centered on the object, then the object should always give me joy. It should not go away. But the object always doesn't give me joy. The same object can give me sorrow at another time, joy at another time. That means joy is not centered on the object, it is centered on me. If it is centered on me, what does that mean? If it is centered on me, it is born from me, it is born from within me. And so, what is the source? Really speaking, the source is not the object. The object becomes maybe a catalyst, looks like a catalyst, but the source is myself alone. And if I am able to recognize the source, the fullness, the full source, which is a source of all the joys, that means the small joy fulfillment have resolved into that bigger sense of fulfillment. In other words, I don't miss out anything. A person who feels fulfilled is a person who doesn't miss out on the small things that gave him fulfillment before, naturally. So that's the idea. Like even the rivers end up so losing themselves and becoming one with the ocean. So also all the little desires and the little joys that are born of the various desires, they all lose themselves. They all resolve into me that has discovered the source of all of them, which is a fullness within my own self. Vihaya kamanya sarvan पुमांश्चरति निःस्पृहः निर्ममो निरहङ्कारः स शान्तिमधिगच्छति विहाय कामान् यः सर्वान् पुमांश्चरति निःस्पृहः. So giving up, vihaya is giving up all the kaman, all the sense objects, all the giving up all the sense objects, means not depending on them. Okay? Not depending on the sense object, he says. Spumam charati, the person, the wise person goes about doing whatever he has to do. Nisprihaha, without craving for them. He says nirmamaha, nirahankaraha, with this particular attitude of that mamatvam. Ahankara is the individual ego, the individuality, the one who thinks that I'm the one who's the author of everything. Okay. So the karta, the doer, if I take myself to the doer of everything, and so I enjoy everything, I do everything like that, if I take myself to be, first of all, it's not true. It's not true. It's not, we don't cause things to happen. There are many factors that cause things to happen. So I don't go about with the erroneous thinking, that ahankara is not there, that I am the doer, I am the karta bhokta, and nirmamaha. Mama is mine, So mine is the child of ahankara. Mamatvam is the child of ahankara. So when I am there, then everything else connected to me. So I think possessive, so I possess things. I am the sole author of things, like that. This kind of thinking the person doesn't have. He is full in himself, but sees himself as a part of a bigger scheme and goes about doing what they have to do, he says. Sa Shantim Adhigachati. So this is a person who lives a life being Shantaha, being tranquil and content. It's a sense of fulfillment and contentment, which is what we are seeking anyway. Esha Brahmi Sthitih Partha Nainam Prapya Vimukhyati Sthitva Syamantakaalepi Brahma Nirvana Mrichyati. Esha Brahmi Sthiti Partha. He says this is what is called as the Brahmi Sthiti. Sthiti is a state of being, Brahmi is connected to Brahman. So Brahman in our tradition, always we talk about, we listen to things, we think about it, we talk about, listen to this word, We are exposed to this word Brahman as something which is the final goal, as something which is to be recognized, as something which is the basis of everything, as something which is the truth. So he says this is this kind of a state of being full and tranquil, not dependent on the world, being content with oneself. This is called as this Brahmi Sthiti, Enam prapya na vimuhyati. Gaining this particular state, the person is no longer so deluded, no longer confused about who and what and where. We have a confusion about who, ourselves, the world, and where we come from. That kind of confusion is no longer there in this person. Stitva asyam antakale api. Having, even when you recognize this, antekale api, even at the end. So here at the end, he says, even so, my whole life I didn't do anything. So what happens then? So here, suppose I remain ignorant my whole life. He says, even at the end, if I, these people always have this question. So how long does it take all this, How long does it take to reach the goal? Then people say it takes so many lives, it takes. So many lives means now I am already 75 years old. Now, how much time do I have left? That means it might as well, should I even waste time in this? Or there are other things to do. Might as well hold on to whatever little I can get from the world. And because this is anyway going to take so many lifetimes, so why waste any more time on this pursuit? At least little bit let me enjoy. So is that how I should think? Or so even at the last minute something, is it possible even? Well, if it, why not possible? It can be possible anytime. So it is, doesn't really matter of what I did or what I did not do. So the whole life, it has to do with my state of mind. It is my level of maturity. So once that is there, if the mature mind is there, when does the child understand 2 plus 2 is 4? When the mind is ready, that's all. It has nothing to do with the, so if the mind is ready, then the child is going to understand. So like this here also, if the mind is ready, then it can recognize, gain this self-knowledge, irrespective of what age it is. So that even antakalya, even later on, so even at the end of one's life, he says, if he understands this, Brahma Nirvanam Richati. He gains the ultimate goal for us, which is moksha, which is freedom. Freedom from samsara, freedom from life of birth and death, etc. So those things will be detailed. They will come again detailed in the later chapters. So with this, the second chapter comes to an end. So next time we'll look at the third one. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.